All right, good evening, Nor'easters. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Norm O'Reilly, Dean of the UNE College of Business. Dr. O'Reilly came to UNE last summer, and he has hit the ground running. He has brought with him over 2 decades of experience and is recognized globally as a leading scholar in the business of sports. He has led educational programs at the University of Maine and at Ohio University. He has also taught at the University of Ottawa, the University of Syracuse, and Stanford, among others. He has authored or co-authored over 20 books, more than 150 publications, and is active in the industry as a part owner of a sports marketing agency, and he also serves as a legal expert witness. He has also attended the Olympics and the Paralympics multiple times in various roles, such as a research consultant and as critical mission staff. Not only is Norm a sought-after industry expert, he is also a lifelong athlete himself. He has competed in swim and Nordic skiing. He was a 2-time academic All-Canadian and an OUA Ontario Conference champion. He continues to compete today. He has qualified for the Boston Marathon in 18, 22, and 24. As you can see from these past experiences, Norm never backs down from a challenge. So when he was hired by UNE last summer, not even 1 year ago, to launch the College of Business, he charged forward. He didn't tiptoe to the starting line. He sprinted for it. And now, in just that short time, we have our UNE College of Business with 10 majors and hot off the press, an MBA collecting applications for this fall. This is huge. UNE is lucky to have Norm leading the charge at UNE, and we are thrilled to have him tonight to share with his experience with you and the secrets for success that he has gleaned over his 2 decades of experience in this field. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Norm O'Reilly.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. And thanks, everybody, for coming. I asked her to do a good introduction. She did an amazing one, so that was really, really nice. So thanks for coming. And this is a little bit different than business. Tonight, we're going to talk about being a student athlete. And so this is a book that myself and 4 other co-authors, you'll see in front of you, you've got it, did. And all of us were student athletes, but much to our chagrin, weren't going to go pro or go to the Olympics, right? Maybe there's a couple of you in the room here that might go pro or play in the Olympics, but most of us are not. And a lot of us make mistakes, right, along the way. So that's the whole point of this work. And it got adopted by the NCAA. We've done a 2nd edition. It's widely used. And the whole point, it's a book you can read when you're going to the bathroom, basically, right? You grab a chapter, give you a couple little tips to make good decisions, right? So that's the point of tonight's thing. So on behalf of the College of Business, brand new, and the Nor'easters and Heather, so thank you for coming. We must acknowledge Ohio University Press, who gave you all a copy of the book tonight, which is great. And I think we have a few extras we can give to other athletes as it goes forward. So they were very nice to do that. So what's it about tonight? Well, as I said, I want to showcase you these 20 secrets really quick, and then have a nice conversation about what they mean, ask some questions, and hopefully there's one little nugget you'll get out of the next 20 minutes that will help you further your own life, mostly once you leave UNE. Okay, so that's kind of the objective for the evening. So being a student athlete, for me, I just turned 50. That's why I got all excited about Ironmans and marathons, because I'm getting old. But I did a big push. But when I think back on all the things in my life, student athlete was one of the greatest things, right? You're all living this life right now, which is amazing, and sadly, for most of you, will end when you graduate, right? You're getting coached, you have athletic support, you have people like Heather organizing things for you, like Patty, all this amazing stuff happening, that disappears, right? And I'll show you my experience on that in a second. So you want to really maximize this unique experience, and there are tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, that would love to have your situation, that wanted to make a team in the NCAA. So it's hard to see up there, but I was a 2-sport athlete. So there's a young me on the right as a swimmer. I'm from Canada. and on the left is a Nordic skier. So I did 2 sports when I was going to school, managed to balance it okay, as Heather said, was an academic All-Canadian. So when I was preparing for this, I thought, well, I'm going to track some data. So this is an estimate of me. So you see 1988. So I was a very sedentary kid. In 1988, I saw the Hawaii Ironman on TV and decided, I'd like to try that. And I got into sport. And that was my trigger point to get active. So I'm old. That's the first thing. Second thing, I've been at it for a very long time. So this is the average number of hours I train per week in general throughout my life. And you can probably relate to this. So I got into it. Before that, it was very low. At my peak, through university, I was training 25 hours a week. Then you probably could guess my daughter was born in 2003. I also have sons that were born in 2009 and 2012. But then they started to get older and come back, and then you get old and it pops up again. So that's my hours of training. Here's my hours of coached training. You might notice a lot of zeros there. So the second I walked out of university, I've not had a coached experience since, right? So this is a big transition. You move to being in a spot where, hey, I don't have anyone pushing me anymore. You deal with this gradual decline in your performance, in your health. You notice, oh man, you put some weight on because you didn't run as much, etc. It's a real challenge to transition from being a serious athlete in a formal environment to trying to be an informal human and stay fit and healthy. And so you can see a lot of the things I've done to keep me doing that along the way. And here would be my performance. So this was really hard. And you could take your average 10K time or how well I do in a triathlon, etc., dropped, and then I've got these little motivators as I've gotten older along the way. So I'm going to brag a little bit. So I was the Maine state triathlon champion last year in 50-54. You're supposed to say, that's great, Norm. Congratulations. Thank you. Sad. And I did qualify, as Heather mentioned, for the Ironman Worlds, which was a bucket list. So there's a couple of things about doing something like that. You just got to stay kind of fast while everyone your age kind of gets slower, injured, or dies. That's the bottom line to that particular accomplishment. But hey, it was a bucket lister nonetheless. Okay, so enough about me. Hopefully that gives you enough reason to think that I'm someone to listen to for the next couple of minutes. So we're here to start, talk about these secrets. So the first is really important. This is an amazing thing. So you want to make the absolute most out of it, athletic, academically, and socially. But it's not something that's easy. You all know this. You're barely sleeping. Any sacrifice you have to make in terms of social, you pay for later. Talked to a couple of the guys over here that are balancing football and science, right? Not easy. It's hard to do. So you have to really be on top of these things to do it. But it's real. Tom Morgan's here, the head of our sales center. Athletes are better sellers, well known. Athletes have a lot of attributes. There's lots of studies done in terms of teamwork. We've had tough experiences. You can know how to take a loss. Some people, when they lose at something, they go into depression. I all know there's a game next week. There's another season, another event, another race, right? So you have some real advantages over other people that you have to kind of take advantage of. Number 2, there's a lot of us, a very, very lot of us. And only 2% of all the divisions of NCAA go pro or go to the Olympics. Do you know what that number means? 540,000? It's Connor Brake's annual income running the center. No, it's a joke. What does 540,000 mean? What do that mean? Yeah, total NCAA athletes. A lot, right? 540,000 people across the 3 divisions. What does this one represent? 10,500. No, Division 1 is a couple 100,000. GoPro close. How many were at the Paris Olympics? Exactly, that's the right point. How many athletes from all 206 jurisdictions competed in the Paris 24 Olympics? So you see that differential? Pretty significant. And of that, 500 or so were Americans. So it's hard, right? Really, really hard. 2,600. What's a really popular sport around here and in Canada? Hockey. What do you think this represents? 2,600 players in the NHL. So it's ours to get hard. What about this one? Sticking with hockey. Starting day rosters in think of the other gender. Professional Women's Hockey League. 159 spots to be a pro female hockey player, right? Is that competitive? Nuts, right? Just to get that kind of far. So Why did we get involved? I mentioned this up front. So we did the first edition and then the second edition, which you had. The NCAA and us got behind this idea of how do you help athletes make good decisions. You might remember, not that long ago, 7 or 8 years ago, there was a lot of rhetoric about student athletes being unemployed, student athletes not being job ready, student athletes being taken advantage of by universities, and that story has really shifted, right? We've done a very good job, and maybe this was part of it, maybe not, but there's a really good, important story to be there. So I'm going to talk for 20 minutes, as I said, then we're going to have lots of time for Q&A. Some of you are freshmen, some of you are sophomores, some of you are juniors, some of you are seniors. Some of these things are like, dude, I got that, already done, thank you. Others you might know. So just take that for granted as we work our way along. And some of it's for people that are about to graduate, right? So we're going to go through a few of those different things. I grouped a couple up so we won't take too long of time, and I'll stick to my 20 minutes total. So the first thing is, and you can read this if you look at chapter 1. As I said, these are like read in the bathroom kind of chapters, is have a plan. But put up your hand here if you've written down a plan for your life as a student athlete. All right, good. I guess we have to read the book. There's a couple. Good. All right, thanks, guys. So it's important. And one thing I've learned in my life, and a lot of people probably know here, is if you plan something, you put it down. We do it in business schools all the time. It's much more likely to happen than if you don't, right? Like if you said, I want to work in international sport, like me, you'd say, well, I got to get some global experience. God, I better speak more than one language. I got to get exposed to working with athletes. I got to learn how marketing goes. I can't just be a former athlete. I have to add all these skills. If you put that down today, by the time you graduate, you can check all those boxes. But when you go to apply for that job 4 years from now and you haven't checked those boxes, there's 150 applicants ahead of you who have all of those skills, right? So a key point is a student athlete is a huge advantage. But when you're competing against someone that's got global internships and multiple languages and a high SAT, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have to have those pieces as well, right? So really important when you think about that. And then what is a student athlete? And we'll talk a little bit about this later on, but are you a student athlete or an athlete student? Now that's kind of academic, but that's what a lot of people think about. What do you prioritize first? How do you balance both? And how do you do things in the rest of your life? And we'll talk about that. So step 3, and Connor and Ashlyn are both here, and they're happy to take some questions in the Q&A. So NIL is a big topic. We added this in the second edition of the book. A couple things we've learned, and I know from myself as an athlete chasing sponsorship and not getting much, is it's really not for most people unless you've got a lot to offer, right? And a lot of athletes, student athletes, have made mistakes signing away their name, image, and likeness. You got amazing support from the university, and we'll kind of get into this in the discussion period. But before you spend any time on it, back to your plan, your priority list. Don't fail a course because you're out pitching things when you don't really have a lot to offer, right? So we're going to get into some stuff about that later on. Here's 3 that I put together. Your success wheel, which is a really cool tool that's in the book, very easy to use. Life skills and balance. I'm going to talk a little bit about these kind of things. So you might remember the name Oliver Luck, Andrew Luck, former NFL quarterback's father. He worked for the NCAA for a short period of time, and he gave us this quote for the book. And it's kind of the idea is to flip it around. So your backup plan is sport. Your A plan is, I'm going to be a physician's assistant. I want to work in marketing and professional sport. I want to be a nurse. Whatever the answer is to that question, that's priority 1. Priority 2 is to be as kick-ass athlete as you can possibly be. And that's a big shift for a lot of people, right? So he told us that. And then here's just some examples of things, different athletes. We interviewed a lot of athletes for the book, talked about different things that you make as your goals to get you where you want to be, right? So thinking about that kind of idea and flipping the switch, right? So you kind of flip it around. Maybe you're all there already. I know I wasn't when that happened. Here's the wheel of success. I won't spend too much time on it, but there's in the book, it talks about all the different ways you can build these kind of things. Everything from time management, balancing what you want to do, keeping your coach happy. One really simple one is don't do your internship with your coach, right? So many athletes do that. It's easy, it's efficient, it's cool. Well, your resume already has that done in spades, right? It's very clear you're a rock star football player, you understand football. Don't do your internship with the football team, right? How's that going to help you when it comes time to get a job, right? Expand, move. So there are little tweaks like that, little tricks like that within the wheel that you can use. The other stuff, What's the other stuff? What do you think the other stuff is outside of school and athletics? Relationships, right? Other people. Partying, fun, family. Maybe you're also interested in, I don't know, playing chess. Maybe you're a big video gamer. I don't know. You have other hobbies, right? They're things that you really have to think about. Really, really have to think about if you want to be super successful as an athlete and as a student, right? And I know that was my case. Those things got to go. A lot of student athletes decide, you know what, I'm not going to have a relationship. I'm going to go out once a month with my friends. Because these are hard decisions, because you all know, see lots of you nodding your head, you make that decision, you freaking pay for it, right? You go out on a Thursday night and you hammer, it hurts your workout the next morning, hurts your studying, you're behind, and you're trying to achieve both of these two things, right? So that other stuff is an important part of your plan to put in your bucket. And you obviously want to have fun, right? You want to do it. You just have to select it in a nice way that keeps your mental health happy and going from there. So whether it's drinking, partying, relationships, you want to think through those kind of things. One thing that's great, that was a bit of a negative one, I know. One thing that's great about being a student athlete is people want to help you. I want to help you as a dean and a former athlete. Ashton wants to help you with NIL. Heather and the team wants to help you. You have academic advisors that go to, we have special processes. You know, I get a note if a student athlete is struggling at midterm. Other students don't get that, right? You have a higher level of service than other students do, right? In the university, you have a higher responsibility. So take advantage of that. You ask your family, you ask your coach, you ask alumni of your team. This happens at teams I play for. I donate money, I help people out. That's what you do, right? Take advantage of that. They can help you with the efficiencies of all that you're trying to do, right? They want to help you. They want to help you find jobs, internships, make your life more efficient, blah, 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 blah. So really take advantage of that, whether it's an uncle, a friend of your coach. It's a special thing that you kind of have. That's a travel agent there. I was trying to kind of, if you have a friend of a family who's a travel agent, maybe they could help you with some sponsorship. Didn't really work. But that was the picture there on the right. Your major really matters. I think you know this. And obviously I'm biased being a business school dean, but this is some new data on average incomes by major 10 years into your career. And so you can look up there, the high end and the low end from Statista. So you'll see things like urban planning, communications, journalism, religious studies at the bottom. You'll see things at the top, engineering, operations, research, business analysis, pharmacy. In some cases, triple. And that's triple the average across all the United States, right? So your major, does it matter? Pretty clear, right? Really freaking matters. So and a lot of athletes do this. Well, I just want to play sports for a couple of years and I'll figure that out later. And then you're 3 years in, you come talk to us. We're like, well, hey, it's too late to do a finance major unless you want to stay in next year. Well, fine, I'll just keep my general. Well, that just cost you $2.5 million over the course of your life, right? Really, really important decision. So on your major. These are three that kind of loop together. They're a nice read if you really have to go to the bathroom, I guess. So take nothing for granted, manage your highs and lows, and face reality in sports and life. And so the reality one really means just be very honest with yourself, right? Like, I used to dream of competing in the Olympics. If I stood back for myself, I didn't have the ability to make the Olympics. I was okay, but I wasn't that good. We all, dream, parents dream, but the reality is if you're playing on the second line of a team, you're not going to the Olympics or playing pro, right? So this kind of reality when we think about it. We mentioned mental health, and we'll get into this a lot more as we kind of get into the Q&A, I think. But this is a real challenge, right? Because one of the things that goes hand in hand with high performers is also high risk. So you're putting high pressure on yourselves as A, an athlete, and B, as a student. Right? What happens when a high performer doesn't perform how they want to? How do you feel after a bad game? Depressed, right? Feel like crap. We're being recorded, or I would have said a different word. You feel terrible, right? And so that's double what most people have to deal with. So you got to be on top of that. Got to understand your stress points. There's some really good tools. Lots of people know them in there. And use that support network, that special support network that you have that others don't. Coaches, teammates, the staff, etc., just to check in, right? Catch these things before it gets too down. Everyone's been depressed. I've been depressed. When you get depressed, and you look back, you kind of realize why. If you can catch it earlier, you can be really, really good. Your physical health, I mean, you're all athletes, you take care of yourself and eat, but not always as good as we should, right? And we often think we're invincible. I'm guilty of that as an athlete, right? Like, I don't need to sleep, I don't need to eat, I can just hammer, and take all this stuff on. Well, still, you want to know your body. Do you know the concept of a circadian rhythm? Anyone know that concept? Nobody? It's a great one. What this point is that everybody has their own unique cycle. So one thing, Connor and I talked about this, one thing that I figured out for me is my high-powered work time, you see all this stuff, is between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. I just work the best then. That doesn't fit with life cycles, but biology isn't dictated by how the world structures the calendar. My wife, who's also a workaholic, she gets up at 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. to hammer her stuff out, right? You may be 9 to 5, but you got to figure that out. So that means a lot of times through my life, I train at 2 o'clock in the morning, which may seem nuts to people, but that's my circadian rhythm. Figure yours out, right? And everyone knows where, and some of that's physical, some of that's mental, and it's amazing, right? You can do an hour at your peak time what it takes for 3 hours in your week times. So then when you're a morning person, feel like you're a morning person? So you're not. But if you are, you're probably way more effective. So if you got some big, high brain power thing to do, you do it in the morning, not at night, right? So you figure out how that works for how you want to go from there. And then the last one there is, I think this is a simple one, but it took me a while to figure this out. But treat academics like you do your athletics. Like if let's say you have a 10K run, you have a 10K run the next morning, you don't go out at 10 p.m. the night before, I better learn how to run. So I'm going to go out for a couple of quick runs here the night before, and I'll do a sprint workout at 3 a.m., and then I'll go to my first run. No, you've been training, you've practiced, do the same thing. You'll notice your grades will just skyrocket right through the roof. All right, here's a couple things just from the book. I'll let you read them. But this is the idea of like the things on one side that we might think, and then the reality on the other side, right? They all make pretty good sense. You probably can think of other examples that you'd have in your life that you make bad decisions. I've got weaknesses for chocolate-covered almonds, for instance. I know I shouldn't. I go buy the box, sit down to work at night. I'll just have a couple. I eat the whole freaking thing. 3,000 calories. And I'm old. I got to go run 30 miles the next day to burn that off, right? You got to know those things so you can control them and cut them off. Don't anyone buy me chocolate-covered almonds. That was not an ask for them. Mentally move on as a senior. How many are here as seniors in the room? Right. So you're already hopefully there. But the last year of school is amazing. Like it's your last year, you're going to be with your team, your last shot at a championship, that coaching is going to disappear. But it's also the first step towards the next piece of your life. So you really got to start checking out on athletics and checking into life, right? So it's very hard to do, and there's some good little tools in there as graduation approaches. These three I kind of grouped together as well, and you can look at them if you want. This is really an internal one. You know, who's your own brand? What are your kind of passions? And how do you invest in yourself as you kind of go through the student experience? And I mentioned this up front, and it's kind of leaning into one or the other. Not saying one is right or one is wrong, but what's your priority? What do you really care about? What's important to you, right? When it comes really to crunch time, you're under that massive pressure. You know it, right? And you're feeling it in both ways. Which wins out? Are you going to put your sports ahead of your athletics ahead of your sport? And only you know the answer to that, but if you have it and you plan for it, you'll do much better. This is a picture of what? A chess thing, but what's it in? A mirror. One of the greatest tools any psychologist has ever had, right? A mirror. Take a few minutes. We're so busy. I'm so guilty of this today. And look in the mirror and think about where you're at. You're athletes. You know your body better than anybody, right? You know when something's off. You know when you're not peak performing. You know when you're down. Then reflect on it and fix it, right? Really, really good tool to do. My example on the branding piece, this is the third one there, is I was like you. I graduated. I was one of those people that made a mistake. I graduated as an athlete, had a degree, and really had nothing else, right? I'd gone back to work at a beer store where I was from, something I don't even put on my resume anymore. I had no mentorship. No one had to talk like this for me. So I was trying to become this athlete guy who did business. It took me 10 years 10 years to change my image from being that person to say, oh, really, you do sports? Because now I've got all this other stuff, a Ph.D., a CPA, Heather mentioned them all, an MBA, all these business experiences, background, et cetera, et cetera. It took me 10 years. You can get way ahead of that if you do that now, right? What do you want to be thought of? What's that first line on your resume when you apply for your jobs after senior year? What are you? Describe yourself in 3 bullet points. Student athlete's going to be one of them. What are the other 2, right? Really important. Getting to the end, pretty close to my time. Activate this advantage and create your brand. I gave you the example of the brand. Here's some of this is from NCAA research, and you can have a look at them. But there are really, as I mentioned up front, serious things that you have that other people don't have, and when you're being interviewed, will give a lot of credence about you to the people that are deciding whether they want to hire you or not. Because when you say you're a student athlete, it's awfully clear you can set goals, awfully clear you can perform, awfully clear you can deal with setbacks, awfully clear you can work with other people if you're in a team sport. Individual athletes, they don't look at you exactly the same. All those kind of pieces, right? So you can really, really highlight those kind of things as you go forward. Managing your reputation. So I grabbed these a couple of student social media sites, right? So on the left and the right. So you want to put a picture up of you hanging out with your friends. When an employer sneaks by and looks at it and they're going to hire you, which one do you want up there? The right? You got to manage your profile. And you have so many good things out there. Really, really important. That's pretty straightforward. Then the last 2 are back to where we started. A plan, but before that, fiscally responsible. So I'm going to talk about that one a little bit and then get back to the plan. So money, and a lot of you in here are in business school, so you know this, but some of you probably don't. But money is a really interesting thing, right? And it's a very important thing in life. And I showed you those salary pieces earlier, right? And you're in this neat situation. And often as student athletes, we get in this, this kind of world. I was in this world where everything's kind of set for you. Your training, your school, your coach, all the things behind you. You're in residence, you're living, and all of a sudden, boom, that ends, right? And so managing money is really, really, really important. So part of your plan should be a financial plan. So do you want to buy a house at some point? Do you want to move out from home? Would you like to have a car? Then what did I show earlier? That the majors up there. Well, if you're a pharmacy major, you might be buying a house in 2 years. If you're studying, I can't remember what the bottom ones were, you're probably never buying a house if you live in southern Maine, right? So thinking about those kind of pieces as you go through, and then you want to build a plan, right? And you're probably, oh my God, I think the 3 people who put up their hand is great. A lot of you go, I don't want a stupid plan. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be anything crazy and elaborate. It can be an Excel spreadsheet, can be a napkin, can be just something you write down in a note, but have some things. What do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 3? Where do I want to be in 1? Heck, you may have something in 1 month. You have a big competition you want to be ready for, and write it down because it will really, really, really help. So that's it. 20 secrets in 22 minutes. I guess I was close. So hopefully that was helpful. Was that helpful? Useful? Awesome. So now I would like to spend the next half hour, less, but a while if we can, having some discussion or questions that people had. And then you can go home and read the book. After your exams, maybe, is what we should say. Who wants to, does anyone have any questions or things you want to talk about?
What would be the first step in building your own brand?
Great. Oh, wow. Start with a hard question. One of my own students, right? Start with a hard question. So a brand. Does everyone know what a brand is? Tom, what's a brand?
A brand is basically an emotional connection you make with people. So, if you look at any brand you know out there, they all make an emotional connection with you first, and then they sell you a product.
Right. So some connection, some attribute. So when go ahead. Keep going. You're going to fit. I thought you were done.
No, I'm done.
So if I say to you Volvo, what pops into your head? Car. Well, what type of car? Oh, they've failed, I guess. Safety is what they try to promote in their stuff, right? What if I say Porsche? Fast. What if I say Nike? Right? So when I say these things, stuff pops into your head, right? To Tom's point, some connectivity. So to Jared, your question, that's where you start, right? So when someone, and this could be something as much as reading, looking at your social media profile, meeting you in an interview, talking to you, what do I want to be known as? So you saw mine, and it took me a long time to get there. I want to be a business expert who specializes in sport. And if you believe Heather, I think I've gotten there. Now, maybe I haven't, but that's my vision of myself. That's what I want people to think about when they meet me, read about me, talk about me, right? And it's taken a long time. So that's a hard, I know that's throwing it back at you, but what do you want to be? And at this stage, it's nebulous, right? You're getting your career started. You may have a whole bunch of different ideas in there, but what do I want to be thought about? And so open up your own social media sites, right? What does my LinkedIn look like? What does my Instagram look like? What are people going to think? Well, that's a guy that drinks beer 4 nights a week. Not really someone you want to hire, right? So what's the portrayal that I want to have, right? Really, really important. And then as Tom mentioned, there's a couple of levels of brand, right? So the first level is awareness. Clearly, that's getting, and this kind of, it's a bit of a different thing. But then it's that level of effect, we call it, or connections. What are the attributes that you want to be known of? So if you think of a high-powered athlete, Rory McIlroy, Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, immediately attributes pop in your head. That's what you want to kind of think about. And then as you get along in your career, you start building equity. So when you're old like me, you say, well, he's got 20 books. And he's done all these, and he testified in front of the IRS, and he did this. So that gives kind of equity. You're not there yet, but you can see where you want to get, right? Awesome. Thank you. Is that good, though, Jared? Is that good on brand? But it's worth thinking about, and it's a really neat concept, right? And maybe one other thing on brand before you go, Nick. One other thing on brand would be, brand is like a bank account. This is important. Brand is like a bank account. You can make deposits, and you can make withdrawals, right? So a great example of a bank account that's had deposits and withdrawals would be Tiger Woods. He made a lot of deposits till he was about 35. Then he made a few big withdrawals. And his brand, if you believe the numbers, these studies that measure it, got as high as a couple of $1 billion and is now around a couple of $100 million, right? Because he's still a good golfer or has remnants of being a good golfer. So you can do good and bad things, which the point there is your life's not over if an employer saw a bad social media post. You can fix it. You can get over it, right? You got a job and they didn't like you and you got let go. Happens to all of us. Not the end of the world. It's a little hit to your bank account and you come back, right? So I should have said that up front. It's a moving target.
Advantage of being in Division III school.
Cool. Maybe I can throw that to Heather. Heather, what would you say to that question? I can talk while you get a microphone. I think and where I went to, I'm Canadian, and when I was in school, it was basically the equivalent of a Division III school at the time. I think it's about maybe the balance that was there between academics and other, but I'll let the expert take that one.
Sure, thank you. So in my experience, I've had opportunities at all 3 divisions, so I can speak from that background and safely say the reason why I've chosen this path, and this is the division that I want to be in and have based my career in, is because of the opportunity. The opportunity to pursue your competitive journey with passion and vigor and reach for the highest highs, but also have the opportunity to pursue internships deeply or clinical or study abroad, to have really rich, robust experiences in multiple opportunities that will not present themselves once you graduate. So you really can customize and invest in so many different areas without it taking away from your competitive journey. And I think that makes Division III really special.
Much better answer than mine. Patty, would you want to add anything to that? No. No, Patty, you nailed it, Heather.
I'm going back here, though.
Oh, Tom Morgan wants to add something, then we'll go to Morgan.
Yeah, as somebody who's hired a lot of athletes in my career, one thing a Division III athlete has, and I'll ask this quite a bit in the interview process, but a Division I athlete, for the most part, is on scholarship. And a Division II athlete, some Division schools actually pay their athletes, through scholarship as athletics. A Division III athlete, you're doing it for the love of the game. You're doing it for the passion that you have for the sport. And you're doing it, and you're making that commitment on top of all the education. So the advantage you have is to really talk about your brand and why you did it, why you played a Division III sport. It's easy to stop when maybe you're not going to have a professional career, but you do it because you love the game, you're competitive, you have drive, and those are the 3 things in a job interview that'll set you apart. Because people are looking for people who are driven.
That's a great point, and it makes you think that if you're in that situation, you should make sure the people interviewing you know the difference between D1, D2, and D3, because a lot of people outside of our world don't know that. Great point, Tom. Morgan?
Kind of going off of Tom's point, how do you think the best way to leverage your skills that you learn from a student athlete into job interviews is?
How is the best way to leverage for job interviews or in general? Let me take general first, and then I think it translates in. So a job interview, and a lot of you have done these, and they get more extensive as you kind of go along. Any good interviewer will ask you skills, and then they'll ask you an example, right? So you need to have, oh yeah, you're a good team player, tell me what you did. Or you've overcome a problem, give me an example. Everybody will ask you that all the time. We're hiring a gazillion people right now in the College of Business, and that's what we ask people. And if don't like the answers or they can't back up what they say, it really hurts. So that's a roundabout way to saying you want to apply those skills in other parts of your life. So you know how to A, set goals, B, to prepare, C, to deliver, deal with all those kind of things. Try that on another project. Maybe you're interested in some colleagues in the business school and starting a little summer business versus just going back to where you worked last year. Maybe you do something on the side to design your own web page to help promote yourself. Bad example. But anything where you could show these kind of skills in a different environment. Pick your summer job a little bit differently. If you've done that one before, don't do it again, right? Well, I told you that. I went back 6 consecutive years to the same job. That's probably one of the reasons why it took me 10 years to get my brand where I wanted to be. And I told you, I don't even have it on my resume now. And I spent 6 years working at that place, right? So that kind of thing. So apply what you would to sport to other things to give you the examples, the stories that you can then share to illustrate all of those attributes. It's not a direct answer, but it's a good question. Connor, I'm going to get you and Ashton maybe to talk about NIL in a second. I'll just give you guys a heads up.
So when did the idea that you have your own image and name that can have a variance of weight behind it become important for you?
Oh, for me, a personal question. So I think it's a great one. And I appreciate Tom's thoughts on this too. There's obviously a point where you have to have enough of whatever it is you're interested in doing that other people might be interested in listening, reading, watching, clicking, hiring, whatever the verb you might want to be is. So I think for me, because I picked the academic route, it was probably, a few years into my academic journey. So I was in my early 30s. So I worked for a long time before I became a professor. And then you kind of started to realize, and I think thinking about it, the other half would be then buying into the brand that you want to become. So because people would say to me like, why are you doing this? I did my CPA when I was in my 30s and all these extra stuff. I'm doing another degree right now. Like I'm out of my mind. But people say, why do you do that? It's because you've bought into that, right? So you bought into it. I think that would be the two things, making sure you have enough inertia there and that you're fully committed to what you want to do. You're all on that stage right now. Heck, I still am sometimes. So what do I want to do with the rest of my life? How do I want to do? So there's obviously options, but is that narrows? Tom, I don't know if you have any thoughts on answering that question. When you decided that you were worth, Tom is extremely active on social and has a great following, but when did you decide that it was time to do that?
Well, I think part of it's deciding back to your personal brand, but also deciding how you want others to view you. For me, I've always, myself personally, when I was coming up before I was an executive, I always tried to assume the responsibility and think like my boss or my mentor was thinking. Because in that, I could help build my image as somebody who potentially could be a leader. And I think all of you, whether you're a captain on your team or you aspire to be a captain, looking for all those leadership opportunities to start define you as someone that's not part of the problem, but part of the solution. And you're going to hear a lot about that in business. And that's why I decided to become. And so I became someone who was always part of the solution. So when there was reorganizations or problems in the business, people would look to me to say, can you help us try to fix it? Versus being somebody that was just part of the problem that was complaining. So it's all about your attitude, but it comes from, all of you are athletes, right? You've got to be team players. You got to be committed to a common goal. You got to help each other succeed. It isn't about one person's stats. It's about the team at the end of the day. And that's how you start building your brand as a team player, as someone that cooperates and participates like that. Then your image becomes that. It takes time, but right now in all your sports, you're defining your image as you work with your teammates, work with your coaches. And that's an image that's going to go with you through your career. And, who do you want to be and why do you want to do it? Yeah, thanks, Tom. And Josh, that kind of adds to, I think one point I gleaned from that was there'll become a point when someone will ask you and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Now I'm being seen as someone that's got something to offer. So that's another good ad there too. All right, so
Oscar, you want to go first? Yeah. Then we'll get a little nil add-on here.
I was going to ask, what traits do you think translate the most, or traits of a student athlete translate the most into life after college?
Oh, which one? Well, if Tom answered, he'd say sales, and there's a lot written about that. You're very good, and there's lots of studies to show that, in fact. But I think as an athlete myself, I think the one looking back, the thing that I've gravitated to that I think this would most helpful for me, and you've probably seen this, you got to know me a little bit, is everything that I do, I treat like I'm doing a triathlon, right, or one of my races, and so you put all in, like as Heather kind of said. And so that to me has been the most valuable, right? Like you half-ass something in sport, like a lot of you play sport like football. What I love about football, you take a play off, the coach just got you off the field, right? Because you get beat. If you have that same mentality in life, in your career, I don't take a day off, imagine how good you'd be, right? So that to me is the thing that I gravitate to the most in mine is that taking that same lens of goal and accomplishment and performance that you do in everything else. Thanks, Oscar. All right, let's. Do you guys want to? Ashton, you want to say a little bit about name, image, and likeness? Maybe. Does anyone have any questions about that they'd like to ask? We got a couple of experts in the room.
Well, I can kind of lead into Ashlyn here, and a couple of points here. I won't go too long because I think everybody at some point does have a question about name, image, and likeness. What does it mean for me? What do I do with it? There's 2 points I want to make, and the first is a question. How many of you in here are watching March Madness and you recognize a guy by the name of Cooper Flagg? Do we know that name? We all know that name? How many of you knew that name before the tournament? Keep your hands up. And how many of you learned about him through the tournament? Keep them up. Okay, so a few people learned about him, right? This guy is everywhere. Part of that's due to his hard work and his work ethic, right? But he's also everywhere outside of the game. So when you're watching commercials and you're on social media, this guy is leveraging his brand all the time. We've heard numbers like $7 million or $15 million. It's worth a value. And a guy with that much value, you can bet he's done his homework, which is part of what our research uncovers. So Norm, myself, Rick Burton, who also wrote this book, a few other researchers, we interviewed 50 or so Division I student athletes, expert witnesses from athletic directors of Power 5, now Power 4 conferences. And the biggest, at the time, gap was the education piece. So if you have a goal of wanting to be like Cooper Flagg or leverage your brand successfully like Mr. Flagg has, number one thing is educate yourself, right? Use the resources you have available to yourself. So that's number one. And this is part of that education. Listen to what the dean is saying and what several of your advisors, your coaches, those close people to you are saying. Listen to them and try to get educated. The second thing, and this kind of goes off to Ashlyn, is that compliance is fun. Some people think compliance is like the fun police, right? They're here to tell you what you can and can't do. But really the way you should think about it with NIL is if I stay within compliance, I can continue to leverage my brand effectively. And part of that, the second thing we learned in this study, is that mental health is something that often doesn't get talked about when you're leveraging your NIL, right? All those things that the dean talked about, performance, academics, am I going to get a job? Are people going to like me? Do I have good relationships with my family? All those things come into question when you start leveraging your brand because all of a sudden, this deal, while providing great benefit, could also take you away from all those things you also care about. So just considering, how am I going to balance my mental health if I engage in this deal? Or how am I going to balance it if a deal falls through? Or what if everybody on my team is getting signed and I'm not? And that could be signed in terms of running camps or signed in terms of promotion of your favorite hamburger joint. Deals come in all shapes and sizes, and they can be fun through compliance. And so I'm not sure if you've got a few takeaways of maybe some things to plug about compliance.
Yeah, just a few things about it, though, is making sure you understand that the difference between Division I and then where we are here at Division III is completely different. Division I, there's a lot that the school can do to go find NIL deals. Here at Division III, you as a student athlete have to do the work. And what you do is when you find someone, you just come back to me and have a conversation. We report it. We go through the actual laws of what you're supposed to follow, which isn't a lot, but you need to understand that the NCAA does want us to be able, we don't report to the NCAA, but you guys have to report it to us. If you guys have any questions about that, let me know.
Thank you. Any comments about name, image, and likeness? That was really helpful. Thank you both. Andy, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things you just mentioned, you mentioned Cooper Flagg, and we all know he's a freshman. So what would you recommend to him, given Norm's speech of graduating in 4 years and getting an education versus maybe he's getting, let's say he's getting $10 million a year in NIL, and he probably would get $25 million, maybe more. I mean, Norm, what do you think? 25 at least?
Next year if he stayed or if he went to the pros?
Well, how about both? If he goes to the pros, I think he's north of 25.
Oh, yeah, pushing 100, I would guess, total salary.
So, all
plus.
right, so say 100 versus if he stays at Duke, 15 or 20, but he won't get the education. Isn't that a tough call?
Versus potential of an injury. It's a really tough call. It's a really tough call.
It is tough, and that's why I'm sure Cooper has assembled a great team of advisors. I am not one of them, unfortunately. I do not text with him on these things, but I think it comes down to what the business term, right? Return on your investment and what you're hoping to get out of his opportunity at Duke. We know Duke's a great school. He's going to get an enriching education. I'm sure if we go back to the degrees slide, I'm sure Duke degrees in business are high on the chart. But what's not on that page is what happens if I'm a 20-year successful professional athlete, which from an ROI perspective, right, is probably going to return greater. But what if I don't? What if I have a 2-year or a career or a short fizzle or God forbid, knock on wood, an injury happens or something out of the ordinary? Definitely some things to consider. And we did see one athlete, a successful quarterback by the name of Andrew Luck, right? Of course, NIL wasn't around when Andrew Luck was a quarterback, but he now has a degree from Stanford. And when he's done playing in his pro career, he's now got plenty of opportunities to walk into. I'm pretty sure Cooper Flagg is going to be hireable if he doesn't make it in the NBA, but just some things to consider at all levels. Great question,
very good.
Andy.
Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. Two right here.
Yeah. Is there a life lesson that you learned as a student athlete that still impacts your career today?
Oh, and I gave Oscar the one answer. That would be the big one. Let me try to think of another one. I think another one would be, I think actually it's a good one. I think, because I, as you saw, I was in individual sports, and some of you are individual sport athletes. But individual sports still require a team, right? And people around you. And I think academia is actually a little like that, right? We're all kind of, particularly at the professor level, we're all kind of on our own. We're publishing ourselves, our own area of thought expertise. You get evaluated as a professor, not as a teammate. So it's your own. So it's more like a baseball team than a football team, right? You have your own independent contributions, but the overall success is very important. So I think I would say that.
Yeah. So my question is, what would be like the most important piece of advice you'd give to an incoming freshman into D3 athletics who is just entering and is going to be a student athlete? What is the most important thing you could tell them?
Yeah, and I think Heather kind of nailed this, and I'll try to play off her. I think you've got an extraordinary opportunity ahead of you. Let's make the assumption that this is it, right? Like you saw in mine, the coaching, true high performance world is going to end the second you walk out of here. Wow, do you have an incredible 4-year platform, whiteboard, whatever you want to call it, in front of you to do two amazing things. One, be an incredible athlete, have an amazing experience as a high-performance athlete. You can't go back at my age and be a high-performance athlete again. Heck, you can't go back 2 years after you graduate. Those years are fleeting. You can work for a very, very long time, right? So maximizing that, but also setting yourself up at the same time for this really successful professional life. And you saw the evidence for that. And if you set down, had a plan, right? Like Secrets, it's actually written chronologically. So Secrets 1 through 4 are at the high school age, and the ones at the end are kind of when you're graduating. It kind of goes in chronological order. So that particular piece, and that would be a very simple way to say, have a plan. Sit down, and you're like a freshman, how do I even know what I'm going to do? That's where you can get that network and this help, and sit down with someone like Patty can help you do that. And you can really, I think it's a pretty exciting, awesome place to be. If I could get in a time machine, I'd love to go back and be there again, because it's a pretty amazing part of life, right? So thanks. Yeah.
What is a personal method that you use to deal with burnout? And what did you do to remotivate yourself to complete all your responsibilities?
Burnout, that's a good question. So, you might have guessed, I've burned out a few times. So I think the first thing with burnout is, as an athlete, right, is it's usually because you're not sleeping enough, right? That's for me where I've kind of go. And you kind of push and push and push and push. So I like the notion of the reset, right? And so that reset can be as simple as an afternoon, right? Or it can be simple as a weekend, something where you do something different. So I mentioned this, I'm a big chess player. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just disappear for a little while and play a few games of chess. I used to do it live. Now I can do it chess.com. I won't tell you my score, but if anyone's here wants to play some with a high score, I'd be happy to. It's kind of my escape. So I think you get something where you're comfortable, you're happy, and you reset. And you know you can feel your body when it's breaking down. And it's honestly worked pretty well for me. The number of times I've burned out is relatively low. So maybe that's lucky. So I think that maybe point to a second part would be prevention, right? Back to we talked, take care of your mental and your physical health so you don't let it happen. Does that help? Is that good? Yeah, thank you. I had to get chess into the conversation somewhere. All right, I think it was one more.
Yeah. How would you say being a triathlete has affected your professional career?
Oh, triathlon. Are you a triathlete?
No.
Okay. Triathlon. So yeah, I saw the Hawaii. This is becoming about me, not about the students. Is that right? But anyways, so when I saw the Ironman when I was very young and I got this passion for it, it was the challenge. I've also climbed mountains. I've been to things like that. I like these really challenging things. And so what do you learn from it? It would be endurance. So have anyone here done an Ironman? Anyone else in the room done an Ironman? Done an Ironman? Half Ironman? Nice. Still a huge deal. Congratulations. And so like a half Ironman is like a 5 or 6 or 7 hour event, depending how fast you are. An Ironman is like 9, 10, 11, 12. So when was the last time you did something for 10 hours nonstop hammering, right? It's really hard. But so they say the 5 things in a triathlon to be successful. What do you think the most important thing is? Including swimming, biking, and running. They're not the most important things. What are the most important things? I had an amazing day at the Worlds you saw there. What did I nail first? You're athletes. 10 hours of hard competition. Mental's in there, yep. Nutrition's number 2. Hydration, number 1. I guess they're kind of linked. So they say your hydration, nutrition, mental toughness, then you better swim, bike, and run. Because something that long and that hard, I mean, your skill's there, but you deteriorate, as a lot of you know. Think about a hard workout when you get the end and you start running out of energy. Your performance just goes like this, right? Declines. So that's, I think, something I learned is endurance from that triathlon. Better be able to swim. Don't be afraid of sharks. What else could I say would be useful in triathlon? All right, anyone else? That was a quick one. Anyone else have one last one, or you want to call it an evening? All right, so thank you, everyone, for coming. Hopefully that was useful. If you didn't get a book, I think you all did, grab one. And don't be shy if we or the College of Business or the Center for Sport and Business Innovation can help you. Thank you.